Welcome everyone to today's Standing Together for Life presentations. We're so happy that you could join us today. I'm Rachel Hendricks, Coordinator for Respect Life Ministries here in the Diocese of Trenton, and we welcome all of you. We're delighted that you could join us today in this virtual format. We appreciate the patience that you've had as we've transitioned because of the snowstorm we're experiencing today. Of course, we would all rather have been in freehold at the Co-Cathedral, celebrating Mass together, a Mass for life, and enjoying each other's fellowship in this gathering. But we are most grateful for the support and assistance of the diocesan staff to allow us to be able to provide this opportunity over a virtual format while we're all home or not in our usual circumstance due to the snow. As most of you know, this day coincides with the National March for Life in Washington, D.C., and we do that purposefully so that we can offer an opportunity to those here in New Jersey, and particularly in the Diocese of Trenton, so that we can stand in solidarity and prayer as we proclaim the sanctity of every human life, together with those who are making the pilgrimage down to DC for the march, and those all across the country who are standing in solidarity together for the end of abortion, for the protection of all women and families, and for the sanctity of all human life and of our families. We welcome back so many of our attendees from our first annual Standing Together for Life event from last year. We're so grateful that so many of you have chosen to return to our program this year. And we welcome so many new folks as well. And we're grateful to have all of you here. Once again, we have a very diverse community of people that are joining in our attendees today. We have leaders and volunteers from pregnancy resource centers around our state. We have people from social concerns ministries in parishes, and people from food pantries and St. Vincent de Paul societies and other social concerns ministries. We have several priests and deacons joining us. Thank you so much for participating and for supporting the work of all of the people of goodwill in New Jersey. We have so many from Pro-Life and Respect Life Ministries, and we have so many others who have joined us for the first time, coming from either various ministries as Altar Rosary Society, religious education, all aspects of our life in church as Catholics, as Christians, as people of goodwill out in our communities, seeking to follow the Holy Spirit's guidance in building a culture of life. So welcome to all of you. We'll open with a prayer today. I ask you to just place yourself in God's presence as we begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Blessed Mother, at the angel's word, you went in haste to the aid of your cousin Elizabeth. Although pregnant yourself, you placed her needs before your own. By your example of radical solidarity, teach us to reverence and protect those in need without conditions or expectations. Ask your Son to give us unfailing determination to witness to the profound dignity of every person at every stage and in every circumstance. In that first Eucharistic procession, you carried Jesus to Elizabeth in her time of need. Obtain for us the grace to bring Christ to any expectant mother who is alone and afraid. May our support help them to find hope and strength in the Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So in designing this year's presentation for you, we reflect back on the last year and a half. As most of you, or all of you probably know, about a year and a half ago, the Dobbs decision of the Supreme Court reversed the Roe v. Wade decision, pushing the abortion issue back to each state to decide. And so last year, we focused more broadly in our presentation, our discussion, about how we would move forward at this inflection point in our time in the new post-Roe era, and specifically here in New Jersey, where abortion climate
about my home state, Virginia.
Worsened.
Okay, take a look up there.
Oh, we'd ask if you could mute your mics, please. And we're happy to have anyone joining us from various other states as well. So we're happy for all of you that are able to join us today from wherever it is that you're located. But we're focusing, our focus was on how we might move forward so that we can better serve women in difficult circumstances when they are pregnant and those families that are struggling. We also talked about collaborating with social concerns ministries together with our Respect Life ministries to better serve the people around us. And built the fact that building a culture of life is truly the work of the whole church, and each of us play a unique role in building that culture of life. So this year we wanted to build on that by zooming into our experiences here locally to each one of us, those challenging experiences we have in how we serve our communities, and especially the abortion vulnerable women and children and families. We wanted to provide practical and actionable steps based on information, experiences, and resources that others have to provide for us in our communities. As a foundation, we wanted to take a look at the 4 pillars of pro-life activities as outlined to us by the US bishops back in the early 70s. They outlined these 4 pillars as prayer and worship, service and outreach, education and awareness, and public advocacy. And so what we've done today is we've compiled a list of a group of panelists that can offer us local expert experiences and resources to advance our efforts in building a culture of life right here in New Jersey. It's our hope that you come away from today's events, but feeling empowered and renewed to find new ways to participate in building this culture of life in your community. Before we begin the panel presentations, I just have a few housekeeping notes to share with you. First, we would ask that each of you could place your audio session or your mic on mute, and this will limit any disruptions we have from background noises. It would probably be also a good idea if you could turn your camera off to avoid any distractions in our presentations. And I just wanted to let you know we've adjusted our schedule slightly to fit into a 2-hour time period. So it's our intention to have started on time, which we were able to, and to conclude by 2:30 today. Given the challenges of having a virtual presentation, we wanted to be able to fit as much of the presentation that was meant in person to each of you at the home setting on this virtual platform. Just to give you an idea, we'll begin with the 4 panelists presentations. Will each be about 10 or 15 minutes in length. Then we'll move to breakout sessions, which will be orchestrated behind the scenes. You'll be placed into a breakout room with some others with some guided questions to help you integrate and kind of chew through some of the presentation information that you have been able to hear. Once that's finished, we're going to reconvene as a group for a final presentation, and then we'll have our closing, like I said, right at about 2:30. Prior to the breakout sessions, you'll be prompted to turn your mics and to unmute yourself, and also to turn your cameras back on so that you can have that open discussion later on in the program. And yeah, so we just ask that you place your microphones on mute, and we ask that you turn off your cameras. Okay. So we're going to begin with our first panelist. Our first panelist is Mr. James King. He is the Executive Director of the New Jersey Catholic Conference, the nonpartisan public policy voice for the Catholic Church in New Jersey. He comes to us with experience and a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, a Master's in Moral Theology from St. Charles Borromeo Seminary, and lots of wonderful experience in the world of public policy and advocacy. So at this point, Jim, I will hand it over to you. And Jim's topic is going to be advocating for life-affirming public policy in our abortion permissive state of New Jersey. Thanks so much, Jim.
Thank you, Rachel, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. A snowy day. I know many of us were probably planning on going to, being together in person, as Rachel said. So as Rachel said, my topic is on the advocacy and public policy, which from a pro-life standpoint can seem kind of, for lack of a better term, depressing here in New Jersey. Obviously, we live in a very permissive state when it comes to abortion. The anti-life groups are out there, are very vocal, very powerful. We came close to fighting a bill at the end of lame duck session back in December that was pulled at the last moment, and we are anticipating the bill to be reintroduced at some point and have that debate come up. But I do have to say that not all is lost. So what I'd like to do for my time is kind of go over a brief overview of the state election from this past November, and then go to the New Jersey Catholic Conference website. Just so if we could we pull that up now, the Catholic Conference website? Thank you, just so it's there. Um, Once, and then go through there and kind of give everyone a brief overview of the resources we have available so that when you leave today, you have access to that information and learn how to keep on top, how you can stay connected with us and the various public policy initiatives that are going on in the state that the church is involved in. So, when I talk about the election, this was easier 20 years ago. I have to say, I've been doing public policy work for about 20 to 22 years now. And 20 years ago with, even though the internet had been around, people were still familiarizing themselves with how to access information. So now everybody seems to have this information at their fingertips, and it seems at times in my mind redundant to go over some of the voting information, results of elections, because it's so widely available. But I think it's helpful for us to just look at it as we start um, our discussion today. So this past November, all 120 seats of the New Jersey legislature were up for re-election. So what we saw, or what was anticipated, was at least one of the houses changing party. So there was talk prior to the election that instead of having one party control from the executive branch and then in the legislature, the two houses of the legislature, we thought possibly one house could flip. That was not the case. We actually saw the legislature kind of go back to the numbers it had prior to the previous election, the 2021 election. So now our numbers fall back in line to what we were dealing with more in 2019 and 2020. So in the General Assembly, the breakdown is 52-28. So we have 52 Democrats, 28 Republicans. And then in the Senate, we have 25 Democrats and 15 Republicans. So, when it comes to abortion, many people have noted that that was a key issue in stopping what others were terming was coming a red wave. So I think that's why you'll see abortion continue to be debated, in our state. Obviously, the party that's in power has made it clear from the executive branch all the way down to the leadership that this is a key issue for them, that they have a mandate to protect it. So, we do have our work cut out for us in the legislature, but even in that sense, we still have opportunities to find ways to get our voices out there, not just to be voices of opposition, but to be voices of help, and voices to help women in need and children in need. So, in this upcoming legislative session, which will last for the next 2 years, we are focusing on several areas to do that. Primary for us is education. We're constantly talking about school choice, promoting Catholic education, making it more affordable for families in the state. Obviously sanctity of life, defending life, and we're branching out in that. We're talking about racial justice, ways we can combat human trafficking, end of life issues, healthcare issues in that sense, because again, our message of pro-life branches out just not on the abortion issue, but on many other issues. Immigration, care for the environment, family and community, affordable housing, anti-hunger. So we're really trying to put a Catholic voice in many areas that I believe will come up in this next legislative session. So with that, I'd like to take a look at the Catholic Conference website, and here's where you can get most of your information. Just wait, can we scroll down real quick? I just want to take a brief overview of the homepage. So if you come down, this is where we post most of our information. If you're not familiar with various public policy updates, news stories, we do have what we call the Friday roundup, where we release information of what's going on in each of the dioceses that week. So we try to keep people informed and see the diverse services the church offers, the diverse news that the church offers. If we can scroll up just way to the top, back to the top again, please. So the three main bars here that I want to show you are take action, find your legislator, legislator, and the diocesan website. If we can click on take action, please. All right, so here's where we'll keep most of our action alerts posted when they're active. But I would like everybody to look at sign up for alerts. This is the best way to keep on top of what's going on public policy wise from the Catholic Church's standpoint. It's very simple. You just enter your email, your zip code, and then you'll be on our mailing list. You'll receive our quarterly newsletter, the Friday roundup, and any action alerts that we have posted. So I would encourage everybody to please, take some time after our discussion today and sign up for that. Jose, can we go up to issues as well? The issues drop down, please. Thank you. And then here's just a brief overview of the content we have under issues. We, obviously faithful citizenship as we prepare for the 2024 national elections. Our respect life issues, where you can get an overview of the various life issues we've dealt with here in the state, family life, social concerns, and education. So, again, this is meant to be a resource for all of you in the state. It's where we put our content. So I highly recommend, please visit and take advantage of what we have there. So, I think I only have a couple minutes left. So in just wrapping up, again, it may seem like we have our work cut out for us, which we do, but I would encourage everyone we have to look for opportunities of where we can be positive influences on public policy here in the state. I would encourage you to find your legislators. We did have some turnover in the legislature. We had a number of retirements. We also had the change in legislative districts. The redistricting occurred. So now you may live in a new legislative district. And again, you can find all this information on the New Jersey Catholic Conference website and help you, and try to build bridges with your elected officials, even if we have these disagreements with them on the life issue. We can always look for areas where we can try to find a common ground, mutual ground, and it's through those building of bridges that we're able to have the conversations. I can tell you from experience, as we fight for the dignity of life in our state, you're going to get somebody who may not agree with you, but will listen and have a conversation if they know who you are, if they've heard from you, if you've made an effort to build that bridge, as opposed to they only hear from you on this one issue. And again, it's a primary issue. It's an important issue to speak about, but we need to broaden our approach on how we advocate and how we address public policy in the state. So again, I would encourage you to find out who your legislators are. If you have events, if you are running a food bank, or if you have a community event, let your elected officials know about it. Let your state legislators know about it. Give them the information about what you're doing, what services you provide. I can tell you from my own experience as a congressional aide that having that information helps us do constituent services, and that's one of the primary responsibilities of our elected officials, to help their constituents. So, if they know that you're a resource out there, you can help their constituents in a time of need. So, and you get all types of requests. I can tell you from my own experience, you got requests for housing. We received requests for, food, utilities. And, if we know what services are out there, what the faith-based community is doing, it makes it a lot easier to serve those constituents. So, again, if you're running a food pantry, if you're, providing services to help people with housing issues, utility issues, education, any type of service issues, start building that relationship with your elected officials now at the start of the legislative session. Because again, when we have to talk about these issues that we have disagreements on, it's a lot easier if you have a prior relationship with them, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be adversarial. So, with that, I know we have other speakers who are going to talk more about the social service aspect of this and the education aspect of our topic today. And again, so I want to leave time for them, but I want to thank everyone. I know I went through the information rather quickly. Again, I encourage everyone to go to the New Jersey Catholic Conference website and just review our information up there, because we'll continue to update it over the next few months as the legislative session picks up momentum. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks so much, Jim, for that wonderful presentation and advice. And thank you and your staff for all the wonderful work that you do to integrate the work of the church into our public policy efforts through coordination with all of our bishops. We really do appreciate the hard work and difficult, challenging experiences that you take on behalf of the people of New Jersey. So thank you. So now we're going to move forward to someone that works in one of the preeminent service areas that serve the people of the Diocese of Trenton through Catholic Charities. Susan Lowry is the Associate Executive Director of Catholic Charities in the Diocese of Trenton. Susan comes with over 20 years experience in leadership and community behavioral health and human services, and she has expertise also in the areas of integrated service systems, design, and implementation. And we've asked Susan here to join us as I became more and more familiar with the incredible services they offer to so many people in our area. So we asked Susan to talk on the real life complexities and effective solutions for vulnerable pregnant women right here in New Jersey. So welcome, Susan, and thank you so much for accepting this invitation to present today.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to join the conversation, and look forward to engaging everyone as we go to the breakout sessions. So I wanted to start with a little bit of an overview about Catholic Charities, Diocese of Trenton. So in our diocese, we have our Catholic Charities, and what we do is we address both social and health needs of our diocese. And we're also part of Catholic Charities USA, which is the national network of Catholic charities that come together as a community to innovate and share information and advocate for the most vulnerable in the communities that we all serve collectively. Next slide, please. So just to give a sense of what the service structure looks like in each county. So in Burlington and Mercer, we have mental health, we have addiction treatment, we do domestic violence services, and then we support basic needs and immigration services for our new neighbors. In Monmouth County, our service structure is a little bit different. We do a little bit more with children and families and transitional housing. And in Ocean County, we have a broad array of services, particularly for individuals seeking domestic violence shelter and associated needs for those family units. And we do immigration services, and we've got a new food pantry that we've just expanded in Ocean County. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to get into too much detail on the services because overall it's about 80 different types of programs. But I wanted to share all of this with you because even among the treatment programs and the crisis programs and the specialty programs that we have, we found that there's just a tremendous gap in terms of need for pregnant women, new moms, and their babies. Next slide, please. And so community partnerships are a way in which we fill a lot of the gaps in the community. Whatever we don't do as a Catholic Charities, we work with others and we support and lift up the other organizations that do that work. And so we're designed to collaborate with many, many different systems. And that really is what led us to our ability to create a program specifically designed for vulnerable women and new babies. And we'll talk about how we journeyed through the beginning of that program and what it looks like today. Next slide, please. So let's start with what we're seeing. So even with all of those programs and services, there are still a tremendous amount of young women who are struggling with substance use disorders, who are pregnant, and who are suffering in silence. And some of the issues that they're facing are fear and stigma. They don't have insurance. They don't have employment. They're homeless. There's domestic violence situations and trafficking. There's a lack of contact with their families. There's isolation, and there's a lack of medical providers and specialists that will help these women through their high-risk pregnancies. So the solution that we've come to through a collaboration and many different partners coming together to wrap services around women in need is called For My Baby and Me. And For My Baby and Me is it's an opioid treatment program for pregnant women and new mothers that's set up in Mercer County, but serves all of the diocese. And it was designed to overcome some of the unique barriers that women who are substance using and are pregnant and may also be homeless, to wrap all of those services around that woman in a supportive way and be there alongside them, journeying with them through their pregnancy and supporting then mom and baby as they become sustainable in their life. So how did we begin this process, and how do we move with our faith and action to expand what FamBam is? So in the fall of 2017, Dr. Schwartz from Capital Health had reached out, and we had a conversation about babies in the NICU, and that there were so many babies that weren't getting prenatal care, and it was really impacting the babies, but also the moms and their well-being. And there are a lot of factors that contributed to that. And so we decided to do what we could to change that trajectory for the moms and the babies. And so we gathered as a community collaboration of providers that do all different things. So hospital systems, the federally qualified health center, and the rescue mission shelter, and the Homefront Family Shelter. And our goal was to do whatever we could to create a system that guides these women towards what they wanted to ultimately do, which was have their babies and have healthy babies and have successful, sustainable lives. And so we didn't know where we would start and how we would build this program, because there really weren't any programs out there. But we made a commitment to say, we'll just do whatever it takes and learn whatever it takes and journey beside these women. And together we designed a program that meets their medical needs, their housing needs, their ongoing substance use disorder treatment needs, provides employment and social services, birth supports, clothing, food, and then peer supports for moms and babies. And so what this program looks like is we identify women. We've got a phone number that women can call 24/7. We'll pick those women up where they're at, dispatch a driver to pick them up, and connect them to a broad array of treatment services and social services and peer supports and basic needs for them and their babies, or even their older children, but really just wrapping everything that's needed around that family unit. And so what's interesting was that we started the program in January 2018. And we had a lot of different providers coming from different perspectives. And so we did some medical screenings, and there were women, many women who presented for those medical screenings. And we found a program that was in Philadelphia. And it was really the only program in the country that was doing similar work. And so I had reached out to a dear friend of mine who is a psychiatrist, but also did a lot of work in small villages in India delivering babies, and brought her along, as well as Dr. Schwartz and our nurses and our staff, to learn more about how to help these women have healthy babies and make their choices for life. And what we found was that this one program that existed in Philadelphia had a tremendous number of Catholic women that were presenting for services, because it really was the only clinic of its kind. And so it really helped us understand the need and the faith-based journey to do this, and really fortified our commitment to providing some type of an alternative for these women. And so within those first 6 months, we just saw a tremendous response from the community, and women presenting in very significant numbers. And within a year, as of March in 2019, we had already had 54 women that received services. We had 14 babies born, and we had 11 babies that were discharged with their mothers at the time of birth. So we had women that were seeking prenatal care and learning more about the program, and learning how to live in recovery as a pregnant woman. And it's interesting because we really didn't know what we were in for, and we ended up being the first program to have twins being born through the program, and then we had triplets, and then we also saw this really interesting and wonderful dynamic of men stepping up beside their wives and their partners and saying, I want to be clean and sober as well. I want to be involved with my family. And you see these families coming together and being a strong family unit. And so the program today has served 164 moms. And we've had 105 babies being born. Last year, we celebrated, for my baby and me, 100 moms later. And as I mentioned, we've had a lot of families reunited, and spouses and partners that are seeking treatment because they've seen the strength of the woman and their baby and want to be part of the family unit. And then we also saw this really interesting dynamic of other healthcare providers saying, well, we want to learn more. We want to try this. We want to do this in our community. And so we do a lot of presenting and education to other communities and other systems, other Catholic charities, other diocesan ministries and hospitals about what they can do in their communities to develop some type of a FAMBAM model and different ways that they can support pregnant, vulnerable women. Next slide, please. And over the course of time, what started was as a discussion among different providers in the community has emerged to be this comprehensive system. Each year, we have more and more providers wanting to be part of the FAMBAM community. We get more and more support from the counties and from the state government and federal supports in all different ways. And we've added parenting classes, and we've added community health workers and doulas. So we see this idea and this concept really expanding to continue to be there for women as they journey through their lives with their children, as the children start to become school age, and really being there as a network and a community within our diocesan structure. Next slide, please. And so I think, our invitation is, what is our unique call to action? And we have so many individuals who are on this call today who do so many things in so many ways to support the vulnerable in our communities. And so maybe your unique call to action is to knit a baby blanket, or to do a donation drive for baby food, or for diapers and wipes, which are always needed for moms and their new babies. And there's so many ways that we can support our pregnant women and our new moms in the community. And it really just begins with what speaks to your heart. I just want to go back to something that Rachel had said when we were preparing for this presentation earlier in the day. We all gathered around 11:30 to do our housekeeping and check our internet connection. And we just started to have a little bit of a discussion. And I think it was Rachel who said, that we're talking about pillars today. And you put it so eloquently, Rachel, about, what is your time and talent calling you to do? And so I just like to end with that and just put that question out to all of you, because there are so many opportunities to provide support and faith and action for pregnant women. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Susan. That was a wonderful presentation. And I just am always in awe of the vast amount of outreach and work that you and your colleagues at Catholic Charities are able to achieve. And so just as you were talking, I was seeing themes of radical solidarity together with these women who are in such dire need. And that's really a theme for Respect Life Ministries throughout the nation, is this radical solidarity. How can we walk along with women, especially in the most difficult, vulnerable circumstances, the wraparound support that you are seeking to achieve to give real, authentic help to these women over the long haul, even in the most difficult situations. That concept of recognizing the gaps in support and seeking to fill them, collaborating with partners, even some partners in the state where we might disagree on certain areas, you're finding common ground in areas where you can make a real difference through collaboration. How important, what an important example that is to each of us, and doing this with the spirit of creativity, trying to think out of the box. And while you're doing this, rebuilding families. So you ended with that question, what is your unique call to action, which leads so beautifully into our next presenter's offering for us today. Our next presenter is Dr. Linda Dix. She has been a friend and a companion to our Catholic communities, our Christian communities, and our greater communities, and certainly our diocese over a long period of time. Today, Dr. Linda Dix is going to talk to us from the perspective of her current role as the president of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul at her parish, Our Lady of Good Counsel, in Morristown, New Jersey. Linda also serves as the current diocesan chairperson for the Holy Innocents Society Board of Trustees in the Diocese of Trenton. And for those that are not aware, Holy Innocents Society provides support for those intellectual and cognitively disabled friends and neighbors that we have in our communities. So Linda is going to be able to offer, where Susan offered a larger scale spirit of collaboration and creativity to find gaps and fill them, to build a culture of life for vulnerable pregnant women. Linda's going to speak to her experiences, certainly after attending our event last year, embracing and fostering a spirit of collaboration and creativity at the parish level to better serve the vulnerable pregnant moms and families and community members right there in their neighborhoods. So welcome, Linda. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to present today.
Thank you, Rachel. I was thrilled to be part of Standing for Life because last year I left with a renewed sense of ministry to come back and really stand with our young pregnant moms and ways that we could certainly support them and assist them. And one of the ways we decided to do that as a conference with St. Vincent de Paul was to collaborate, because collaboration is really key to ministry. Starting with our diocese and our most supportive bishop, with our parish, and certainly with people in our community, we reached out to stand together. And in standing together, we felt we could better meet the needs of those guests that we serve. So I'd like to share with you 3 examples of collaboration. We were blessed to receive money from the Bishop Barr Foundation in the summer from the endowment fund. And with that money, we were able to send our guests to a day at the farm. And that experience took us into the heart of their lives. We were very, very surprised and very pleased to hear what their reaction was to that day. A mom called us and said that her daughter had suffered from a miscarriage and she was inconsolable. And she said, we would like to take the tickets and with our extended family go to the day at the farm and experience a sense of healing, because she was pregnant again. And she said, we never had the time or the money to get together and to celebrate. And they wanted to do a reveal of sorts. And after they had done that, she called and she said it was a beautiful day to experience God's creation and God's unconditional love, because they had a sense of healing, but also a sense of joy in receiving this new baby. Another grandmother wrote to me and said, the toughest thing about being poor and being a grandmom was the fact that she could never take her grandchildren to any place. She said, really, there was no money to be able to splurge with the grandchildren to take them out. So she said, with this experience and with these tickets in hand this summer, we were able, she said, to go to the farm. And she said, it was like Camelot for me, because for one shining brief moment, to them, I was the best Nana in the world. And I'm going to ask Josue to show those pictures again of our Cub Scouts, because we had a very poignant experience with our Cub Scouts at Christmas time. A young den mother had called me and asked for an experience of working with St. Vincent de Paul and some of our guests. She wanted a philanthropic experience for the Cub Scouts. And she had lots of great experiences and lots of great ideas, but with the confidentiality protocols in place with our guests, I thought maybe they wouldn't work. And so I just simply shared with her a family that we were most concerned about and still are. We have a family who was homeless, who is living in a motel with a 4-year-old and a baby on the way, who's expected as we speak any day now. And I had just simply said to her, they are alone. They don't have extended family to help them. And I started to explain what it was like to live in a motel with no kitchen and just a small crock pot to feed the family. And we spoke, and she became more quiet, and I was maybe afraid that maybe I had said too much. And I had said, could you please pray for the family? And with that, we said goodbye, and I gave it to God. And God is good, because the next day she called and she said, we are going to take on this family. We would like to work with you and with them and with the conference. And she said, what was the real closer or the clincher point was the fact that the Cub Scouts wanted to let the baby and the little 4-year-old know that they had friends who wanted to help. And so carefully researched, as you can see in the pictures, 2 weeks later, we had an array of gifts, which surprised me. They did their research. They had a small refrigerator, which would fit into a motel room, diapers. They had gifts for the family, for the 4-year-old. They had a collapsible sink because they were campers and thought they could use that. And enough clothes for this baby that would take them into the next 12 months of life for all seasons and for all sizes, and had researched crockpot recipes so that the food that they brought could be used in a crockpot. And I couldn't help but think that as we prepared our hearts this Christmas for the coming of the fragile baby in the manger, we were preparing this family to bring a small baby, a newborn, into the world who was homeless, but certainly loved and among friends. And Henry Nouwen has a beautiful quote that said, the friend who cares is one who cares to share their pain and touch their wounds with gentle and tender hands. And certainly our Cub Scouts did that and were a friend of the poor this Christmas. And as difficult as that story is as to tell, there are 933 homeless individuals, according to the Point in Time survey last year that was taken in Burlington County. We have about 248 guests that we are working with now. We work with utilities and food insecurity. We work with rent. We also work with clothing and shelter. But we had decided early on, with the 248 guests that we have in the conference at Our Lady of Good Counsel, that we would need to network and to collaborate with others if we were going to truly meet their needs. So what I would like to share with you now in the remaining time are ways that we have tried to creatively collaborate within our parish and within Burlington County. And we reach out beginning with our parishioners at Our Lady of Good Counsel, who are very generous to us financially, but we also encourage them to bring perhaps a can of food or baby items each week. So because many times people do not understand that a can of food can be profoundly pro-life, particularly for those who are desperately hungry. And all of our 248 guests that we are working with are. As I said, after attending last year's event, I began to understand how vulnerable to abortion some of our young women are. And so therefore, we invited our Respect Life ministers to come and speak to us about additional support for our pregnant moms and to share with us local resources such as Catholic Charities, Options, First Way, and Helpers of God's Precious Infants. And I'm grateful to Rachel because the Respect Life office has put out a resource called Walking with Moms Chart, which has resources from across the entire diocese in every county. And we have placed those resources into the packets that we give to our guest every time someone calls. And friends in the community who are in need share with other friends, and therefore that list and those resources has been well circulated. And I'm grateful to Rachel and the Respect Life office for that. We also ask our parishioners to bake casseroles, and our young moms have said that many times that's the best food that they've had in a long time. We ask our parishioners also to keep informed through our bulletin announcements, and that also keeps our funds coming. But we also reach out to our district and to other conferences for cost sharing issues. And our national office also offers a Voice of the Poor national advocacy group, which has been brought to our attention by our diocesan president, Joan Olden, because we do advocate for those in need. We have even sent our guests to Senator Singleton's office in Morristown for assistance. We have lobbied at county resource fairs with Congressman Andy Kim for a county homeless shelter, which we are working on, because we do believe that our elected officials share the responsibility to alleviate poverty in our country as well. We have a network with Catholic Charities and are most grateful for the parish assistance checks. We have worked with Francesca Valentin. We're grateful for their services, their counseling, as well as for my baby and me. And we have collaborated with local nonprofit organizations such as Family Promise, Volunteers of America, and Beloved. And we even crafted a day of retreat with county officials. We asked them to come and share county resources with us and invited them to pray along with our district conferences. And that was a powerful day of a collaboration as well as a prayer. We have a list of those resources, which we're happy to share with you, and Rachel will explain how to do that at the end of our session today. Our Knights of Columbus, who I know are on the screen with us, Council 1082, are very, very generous to us. And we stand with these noble men through multiple food drives throughout the year. And as we've shown in the slides, we hang banners over Main Street in Morristown so the entire town participates. We advertise our food drive with a big sign on the parish steps, as you can see. We put ads in the local newspapers, on Facebook, on the parish web, and we post flyers in stores and churches all over town. We also invite our school and religious education programs to work with us and to plan their food drives at the same time so that we have a concerted parish effort. And collaboration works because we were able to fill at our last food drive 3 Morristown Ministerial pantries with hams and with turkeys and with food. And even my son came with his truck. And on the way home was very quiet. And I said to him, you know, what's in your mind? You can see him there in the truck. And I said, what are you thinking of? And he said, I have never worked with people who were more passionate about serving the poor and giving food to those who are in need in the community. And I'd like to do it next year. And I said, well, that's good because I signed you up and your truck next year. But I also work with the Morristown Ministerium. They also support St. Vincent de Paul in Morristown. That involves all of our local churches. You know, I come to them with our needs and our joys, and they respond with food and finances and friendship. And one church has actually planted a mustard garden ministry, and every Thursday and every Saturday during the summer and the fall, they give us fresh produce. And our young mothers, who are very dedicated in providing healthy meals for their children, have really benefited from that. Our own pastor, Father Jim, is building an outdoor garden, and in April, our school children will be planting produce for the poor, and St. Vincent de Paul has supported their efforts. My confirmation class and our special needs ministry all join, and we collect toiletries and actually fill and stuff toiletry bags for the homeless as well. One of the ministerial pastors is the chaplain at a continuing care facility in Morristown called Evergreens, and he invited me to speak there. And now their group Stitching Bees has provided us with beautiful handcrafted scarves and baby blankets, as well as baby clothes for our guests. Our district president, Frank Cumbo, and I sit on the men board, which was begun in Morristown in 1989 by 9 local churches, of which ours is one. And we continue to provide affordable housing for those who are in need, for the elderly and for the disabled. Because many of our guests and their children have special needs, we have also reached out to the Diocesan Holy Innocents Society, and it has been renowned and still is for its catechesis with children with special needs. Denise Contino works with us in the Office of Catechesis, but it has also expanded its services. Brenda Rasher is the Executive Director of the Office of Catholic Services, and those areas now include medical, legal, housing, vocational, educational, and respite care areas, because the board is dedicated to working with all people with special needs and provides special, also sensory-friendly masses, which we're grateful to our parish priests for as well. But the support of our parish priest and our pastors is really invaluable. Presently, our pastor is working to revitalize the Respect Life ministry in our parish, to have a more inclusive committee. We have St. Vincent de Paul, Knights of Columbus, and various other ministers involved. He also wrote a beautiful prayer to our Lady of Good Counsel for Respect Life ministry during the month of October, so we all focus on Respect Life. And he encouraged one of our parishioners, Jim Cassidy, whose dream it was to put a book together with those in the parish who wrote articles about pro-life, as well as special needs, as well as social concerns. And the book is known Keeping the Faith and Passing It On, and he published it. And it's sold like hotcakes in the parish, and the proceeds have been well received and went to St. Vincent de Paul. But in closing, I would just like to say at the core of collaboration is prayer. There was a little boy who I had seen while sitting in the office, who was in front of our church one day on his bike doing wheelies, and he was reading a St. Vincent de Paul sign that was hanging from the front of the church that said, "If you are in need of rent, please call." And he called. About an hour later, this little voice at the other end of the phone said, "My mother can't speak English or read English, but I can, and we need help. Can you come?" And we were there within an hour. The first thing we did was to pray, a universal language of humanity. And that began a beautiful relationship with this family. But as we left, he turned to his brother and he said, "I like these people because they pray with us." And that is the first thing that we do when we gather with our guests. We see in them the face of God. And I am moved also by the spirituality of the members of our conference. We work with our spiritual director, Father Jack, whose discernment is invaluable. And we certainly have worked with other pastors as well. Grateful to Father Damien, who brought St. Vincent de Paul to Morristown, and Father Chris Bacala, who has well established us in Morristown, because we really can't serve the poor without the conference and those who have been working with us. In the words of Cesar Chavez, "Grant me the courage to serve others, for in service there is true life." And I do believe that the truth of the matter is that we can work together, because in this ministry, God is revealed. And in that openness of dialogue and in that ministerial work with many hands, I believe that we are really stronger when we stand together. Because with every home visit that I experience and with all the years that I've had in parish ministry, I have learned never, ever to underestimate that power of God working through us. I do believe that we have the ability to collaborate and to build that kingdom of God on earth. We just need that courage and the faith and the openness to do that. And in the words of Maya Angelou, she said, if we step out on the word of the Lord, we can certainly be stronger together. We all need each other, our dioceses, our parishes, and our towns, to creatively help, support, advocate, and feed all of those who come to us. And so I would like to conclude today with a prayer from one of my favorite saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, a woman who knew well the signs of her times. Just a little change that I made to it. She prays, "Christ has no body now on earth but ours, no hands, no feet on earth but ours. Ours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Ours are the feet with which he walks to do good, and ours are the hands by which he blesses all the world. Christ has no body now on earth but ours." Amen. I invite all of you to collaborate, to work together, and to certainly work most especially for our most pregnant moms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda, for that beautiful presentation. And I'm just, again, in awe of what you're able to accomplish when you're open to that collaboration, to providing so much assistance to those around you through the gifts of not only your own gifts, but those around you. And then that invitation that you offer to community members to assist in the work, the important work that St. Vincent de Paul Society does together with Respect Life and all of the other community members that you mentioned. Linda mentioned the resource list that she utilizes in her ministry work, and we'll be able to provide many of the resources that have been mentioned today so far in a follow-up email. It was our intention in our in-person event, of course, to provide these items for you in person for you to take home with you. But since we're in a virtual format, we'll be able to provide through a follow-up email resources that are mentioned throughout today that could be helpful to you. Linda mentioned the Walking with Moms in Need initiative, and that's another great resource that we can provide. It's a list of all of the main Catholic or Christian centers in our diocese that assist vulnerable pregnant moms in need. That can be a great resource, as Linda had mentioned, when that goes out to all the families in need. It is that the word of those resources then spread exponentially throughout the community. Whoever sees those posters or flyers will know that there are places to go to get help, at least a first step in. And certainly St. Vincent de Paul societies and so many of our parishes are additional places to enter into for assistance in so many different ways. Thank you, Linda, for reminding us to enter into our work and to stay centered in our work through prayer. We can't do everything ourselves, even within the church. We can't do everything, but God calls us to reach out into the community to build that culture of life through our unity and through our common goals in uplifting the dignity of all human life. So thank you so much, Linda. As is mentioned in a couple of the presentations, so many of the abortion vulnerable pregnant women are in that situation sometimes because their pregnancies are unplanned. And the rates of abortion among unmarried women who find themselves pregnant in difficult circumstances is very high. We tend to see the most vulnerable women being those that are unmarried. And so that turns us to ask the question, as came up in last year's program too, what can we do to better form our young people, to better form women and men about the dignity of their own bodies, of their own sexuality, and what is God's plan for that sexuality? We know the Catholic Church, what the Catholic Church teaches about the importance and value of our fertility and sexuality. And we have a special guest today that's going to help us understand how we might be able to share God's plan. So Enza Cerami is our next speaker. She's going to be speaking about effective outreach strategies for sharing God's news and plan for sexuality. Enza is a professional speaker and licensed social worker who is very passionate about proclaiming God's call to authentic love to youth and young adults and to parents as well. She's the founder and executive director of Living Stones Incorporated, a nonprofit organization dedicated to proclaiming the teaching of St. John Paul II, known as the theology of the body. So Enza, welcome, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Oh my goodness, it is my honor and my privilege to be here with all of you. I apologize for my voice. I'm getting over a cold, but I truly am excited to be here with all of you. I'm going to share my screen. And there we go. Okay, so yeah, my passion really is sharing with youth about God's plan for sex and marriage. I'm going to be drinking throughout this so that I can keep my voice going. So the first quote I wanted to start with is from St. John Paul II, and he said, "It is an illusion to think that we can build a true culture of human life if we do not help the young to accept and experience sexuality and love and the whole of life according to their true meaning in their close interconnection. There can be no avoiding the duty to offer, especially to adolescents and young adults, an authentic education in sexuality and in love, an education which involves training in chastity as a virtue." And this is so important in a culture where we've completely lost the connection between sex, babies, and marriage. It used to be that they were synonymous, right? But that's not the case anymore. So we need a paradigm shift, a real paradigm shift, which is a major change in the worldview, concepts and practices of how something works or is accomplished. So what do I mean by that? Well, I have the picture in the background. You see those ripples and the water on the screen. And the idea is that kind of what everyone has been saying, each one of us has different gifts. And we're going to talk about how you can bring this message to your parish or your school. But the idea is that we can't ignore this as a need any longer. And identifying it as a need, first of all, like St. John Paul II did, and then recognizing like we can't ignore the fact that our children, our teens, our young adults are growing up in a culture that is very different than, let's say, 50, 60 years ago, where I said babies, marriage, those were connected, right? So what can we do? Well, the important thing is to give our kids an opportunity to have that paradigm shift. they can't help that they don't know what they don't know. They are growing up in a culture that promotes promiscuity, promotes a hookup culture, which is, sexual relationships with no strings attached. And what does that do? I mean, it's an easy trickle effect, right? Young men and women are in various sexual relationships with no commitment. And then there's a pregnancy, right? And now they're in a crisis situation. And even, there's so much we could kind of expand on this, but to just hone in on that. And I believe, that this paradigm shift also has to do with us believing that our kids are willing to hear a different perspective. But it all depends on how we pose it to them. And so it's about creating a new language, right? And it's also about helping them to understand what is that Catholic anthropology, right? What is it that we are talking about? We're not just saying, no, you have to wait till marriage. It's not just that. It's about giving them a new vision, right? It says in Proverbs that if we don't have a vision, that we perish. Our children, our teens, our youth, our young adults are in need of a new vision. And so that vision, which St. John Paul II so beautifully laid out, really has so much to do with teaching them their dignity, their value, and what the purpose of sex is, that it's a beautiful gift. And not only that, what an immense responsibility that God allows us to be part of creating a new human life, right? And so if that's the case, every intimate sexual encounter should be in marriage, so that we are open to life and to the recognition of the responsibility for that life. But they don't have any language for that because they've never been exposed to that. So we need to enter into this just from a three-legged stool approach. And I love the idea of we're looking at parents, children, and the church community. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'm raising two teenage girls. I know what it's like out there. I'm by no means perfect at this or a self-proclaimed expert, because I'm learning as I go, praying hard and asking for help and resources. But we need to build up our parents. There's this unspoken rule where parents are thinking, oh, the school's going to talk about it if they're in Catholic school, or if they're going to CCD or religious education. And in religious education and at the school, a lot of times in my experience over the years, they think, well, you know what? The family's going to talk about it. We don't want to step on any toes. And none of our teachers or catechists are really trained in sharing this message. So we'll kind of just leave it alone and let the parents handle it. So what's happening is the parents aren't saying anything. The school isn't saying anything, or the religious ed program, and our kids are getting an unintentional consent. An unintentional consent, what do I mean by that? When we don't address this head on and say, this is not God's plan. He has a beautiful plan for you, and here it is, and how this is how you can live it out, and invite them, propose these ideas to them, starting in 6th or 7th grade, or whenever we have the opportunity, but hopefully younger is better. We need to do that, but parents need to be equipped to do that. So we need to have programming to address them, to encourage them. Children, like I just said, like starting as young as possible, giving them the idea, the language that you are a gift, your body is a gift, and that you are a steward of that gift, and that how you live your life, how you use your body, either honors or dishonors God. And saying that, I just want to make a quick note that whenever I do my presentations, and I know from, learning from others, that it is crucially important that as we share this message, we share it in love and not in condemnation, that these children are presented with an opportunity to choose it. And that if for some of them, when I present, I could see in their faces that they've already made decisions that maybe they regret, I always focus on sharing the mercy and love of God, that they can start over no matter where they are. So many people believe the lie that if they've already been sexually active, that they can't begin again, and that's not true. And so introducing them to beginning again in confession and the importance of the sacraments. And then the church community, this is with the same equipping parents and children and encouraging and empowering. We need to do the same for our schools, our parishes, our teachers, our catechists, those people who are going to be in front of kids who are making an impact. Most of us, and I don't know if you could raise your hand, I can't see you, but we were never trained or formed in the area of our sexuality and a Catholic anthropology, a way of understanding our value, our dignity, and what our sexuality is intended for. I know I grew up thinking, oh my goodness, like we can't even talk about that stuff, right? But the reality is no. In fact, the church honors and recognizes that this is part of God's plan, and we need to train and empower those people who are going to be in touch with the kids. Okay, so sphere of influence. This all depends on where you are, right? So what do I mean by that? You see all these people here. Each one of us, it's been said, and I don't know the exact reference to this, but we, in the course of our lifetime, will be connected to probably about 1,000 people. And we might not be in contact with all of them. But if you think of, let's say, when you make up a list, a guest list for a wedding, and you see how many people you know, right? This is kind of a representation of the fact that each one of us has an impact. And you might be sitting here listening to this and saying, Enza, like, I am so out of touch with any of this. And it's not my gifts, it's not what I do. I don't know how I could be of help. So here we go. This is how we plug in, right? Knowing your sphere of influence. Who do you know? Do you know someone that works in religious education? Are you a catechist? Do you know a catechist that you can connect with? Are you familiar with a Catholic school teacher, principal? Do your children, grandchildren go to a Catholic school? These are connections, these people to network, right? And knowing that, and I also mentioned parish youth group, right? Collaborating with them. So you plug into already existing ministries and then hire out. What do I mean by hire out? So I'm going to talk about the resources in a second now. These are a list of resources. So the top one is the Happiest People Project, which is my ministry with Living Stones. I have worked with confirmation programs to do retreats, talks, parenting workshops. You could call me, right? Or we can connect and we can set up a presentation that fits your setting. And I can even give you the language, or we could have a conversation with your contact at the school, at the parish. And because sometimes I think a lot of it is we're so intimidated, we don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how to bring this up. I don't want to offend anybody. So that's my job. I do all that. Hopefully I'm not offending anybody, but I'm comfortable in this area, and people think I'm nuts, but it is my passion because I don't have time to share this now, but I grew up going through religious education and not receiving this formation. This wasn't talked about. And unfortunately, like many of us, had to learn the hard way, right? So don't worry about being intimidated with the language. This is where you hire out, right? I talk about down below, you'll see LifeNet, Culture Project, Generation Life. These are also organizations that do pro-life work, that do chastity presentations. LifeNet is in Northern Jersey. Culture Project, Generation Life is in the Philly area, I believe. So those are the people who you can connect with. Hire a speaker, usually, and I know I do this as well because I run a nonprofit. I started Living Stones to make this available and for finances not to stand as an issue. So I have wonderful donors who make this possible, who believe in this mission. So the stipend will be relatively, reasonable, but this is where you don't have to be the expert here. And to just wrap it up, concluding, you'll also see on the very top, the Happiest Mothers and Daughter. online series. This is something I created as a result of working with Rachel and Peg Hensler at the Diocese of Trenton. It's a video series for mothers and daughters to start talking about these issues. Short videos, workbook, where you can bring it down and make it tangible and start to have those conversations, which might feel awkward or intimidating. Mother-daughter tea had a phenomenal, wonderful experience with Rachel, with Peg Hensler, and the Diocese of Trenton, and it's spread out. So we started as a pilot a couple years ago, and now they have the pilot, the template. You can plug in and do it at your parish. Get a team of people together. And the reason for this, we're talking about the kids, is because we need opportunities. The culture is 24/7 blasting a counterfeit idea of our sexuality to these kids. So we need to create opportunities in our community to build up the Catholic anthropology, right? So this is where the mother-daughter tea was phenomenal. It was fun. They got to talk about different aspects of what it means to be a young woman, chastity, as well as NFP. So it was phenomenal. Father and son breakfast. And I put this here as a suggestion. It might be already be in place or people already doing this. Have a father and son breakfast where you can have a speaker come in and talk about these very issues and have activities. Let's bring the conversation to the forefront. We talked about LifeNet and Culture Project Generation Life. LEAD is a men's group video series, again, to help build up fathers so that they can give back and lead by example, as well as Integrity Restored. They're a phenomenal ministry. You can find them online, but we'll send out the resources. They talk about the tough issues that we need to encourage our families, all of which trickle down, remember, to preventing unplanned pregnancies, and Walking with Purpose is for women. And then, of course, Ascension Press and Chastity Project have phenomenal resources. If you can't get a speaker in, maybe you're a catechist, with the approval of the program, you can show a video and do questions with your class. So you can get creative with it. Ultimately, just to stop my share here, and I'm going to go back. I don't know if you could see me here. If you guys could have me on full screen. I'm not sure if you can connect me as a full screen, but just the idea that we all have gifts and we all have a sphere of influence, and you can make a difference in this. And people get really discouraged and think like, I don't know, this is such a huge issue. How do I begin to contend with it? You just bloom where you're planted. Like that picture, I forgot to mention that. The picture of the flower coming up through the concrete, bloom where you're planted. Pray. We just ended the last speaker with saying prayer. Lord, what do you want me to do? And how do you want me to serve? And ultimately, then all the pieces come together. And each one of us has that ripple effect. So I'm so encouraged by all the speakers today. And it was such a privilege to be a part of this event. And I'm excited to hear from you. We'll be sending out resources. So if I could be of assistance at your parish or school, I would be happy to do so.
Thank you so much, Enza, for all of that and for your dedication to spreading the word of God's plan for sexuality and the sanctity of our fertility, all that builds up this culture of life that is so desperately needed. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And as Enza mentioned, we will make all the resources available to all of you with a follow-up email, and we're excited to do that. And so you've heard so many different things from, like we said, across those 4 pillars of pro-life activities, but really there are 4 pillars really for all of us in active life as baptized people, as Catholics, as Christians, and people of goodwill. And so we hope you take that to heart: the prayer and worship, service and outreach, education and awareness, and advocacy, public advocacy. All 4 are so important as we live out our lives as baptized people in the communities. I would like to invite a special guest to join us. So like I said, many of you were able to join us last year for our first Standing Together for Life seminar event. And we enjoyed the speaker, Dr. Charlie Camosi, who joined us with much expertise in the area of building a culture of life, Charlie is a professor of medical humanities for Creighton University School of Medicine. He's a professor of moral theology at St. Joseph's Seminary in New York, Dunwoody. He's also a frequent collaborator and contributor, speaker, and panelist on a national level to groups including the Catholic Medical Association. He's an author of many books, contributes to many Catholic and secular outlets on areas of culture, building a culture of life, bioethics in many areas. And Charlie's been a participant along with all of you today, listening in to our presentations. And I'd like to invite Charlie to just maybe offer us some remarks about what he's heard today in the presentations, where we've come in the last year and a half since the overturn of Roe, in building a culture of life. And really a big question is is all of this realistic? Is it realistic to have optimism in building a culture of life in the culture in which we live, especially over the last year, as we've seen various things happen in different states with ballot initiatives that have gone a way that does not uphold the sanctity of life. So Charlie, I'll invite you to unmute your mic and join us and lend us any remarks that you have for just a couple of minutes about these things. Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes. First of all, Rachel, I hope you take a bow for organizing this thing. This has been an absolutely fantastic day together, time together. The beauty of the fullness of the tradition just on display in all its glory here. I feel blessed to be able just to be part of it and listen in. I do want to say, though, that it can be many of us, I think, who identify with the pro-life movement can feel discouraged, right? It can be discouraging to go through what we've gone through in New Jersey, the broader country, all the losses with ballot initiatives. But I think there's a different way to look at this. I mean, obviously, these are not good things, but it's also the case that it can be a galvanizing force for a new movement to build a holistic culture of life, to focus on the culture, winning the culture, right? Which is a lot of what I talked about last year and what this is this year with today's presentations. And I'm here to say that it is very realistic. The number of postmortems after Ohio and all these other losses give a clear sense, and I've been a part of more than one of them, give a very clear sense that we need to focus on the culture, that we need to focus on doing things differently. In fact, it seems clear now from the people I talk to anyway, many pro-life leaders, that there's a shift to focus on something that's being increasingly called unwanted and coerced abortion. Unwanted and coerced abortion. And you could think about explicitly coerced abortions, right? I mean, we heard about intimate partner violence being something that Catholic Charities, for instance, deals with. Did you know, and I think I mentioned this last year, the causes of death for pregnant women by homicide outnumber any medical reason that a pregnant woman faces death. So obviously, huge common ground across the board to deal with explicitly coerced abortion. But then we heard a lot of issues today brought up that really intersect with implicitly coerced abortion or structurally coerced abortion, right? People who don't want abortions, but because of poverty, social expectations, any number of issues, have abortions they don't want. They're unwanted abortions. And this totally blows up the narrative, right? That abortion is this empowering product of autonomy and choice and freedom, right? That's just not at all what the statistics tell us about this. And so there's a golden opportunity here, I think, to focus on unwanted and coerced abortion along the lines that have been suggested for the last hour or so. And I'm sure you talked about in your breakout sessions at all. I'll just finish with a very quick quote that you may have heard before from the pro-life feminist Frederica Matthews Green, who said, "A woman wants an abortion like an animal caught in a trap wants to gnaw off its own leg. A woman wants an abortion like an animal caught in a trap wants to gnaw off its own leg." It's a powerful, I think, image for the kind of people we are called to serve as holistic pro-lifers. And again, the opportunities for collaboration to serve women in those desperate situations are humongous. And I'm so glad to have people like Rachel, the diocese, and all these folks on the call to call us and to help us organize ourselves to do precisely that. So thank you, Rachel, for bringing us all together.
And thank you, Charlie, for kind of on the spot allowing us to pull you in and offer your remarks. I think they're so meaningful and carry so much weight and optimism. So we are grateful to all that you do in encouraging us and what you do throughout the country, encouraging a consistent culture of life across the span of from the moment of conception to natural death. And so Charlie's talk from last year is actually on the Diocese of Trenton Respect Life webpage. We'll include that with the resources that we hand out so you can reflect on that once again. And I'll just mention too that just a couple of days ago, Charlie had an op-ed in Newsweek that I'm sure you could Google up and take a look at his most recent comments that he had to offer. So thank you so much, Charlie. We appreciate all that you do and for you coming on for your remarks today. Thanks. All right, so we're going to move ahead now. After your table discussions, after hearing so much from our presenters today, hopefully you're getting that sense of renewal and empowerment to do something. But like, as Charlie mentioned, sometimes work in the pro-life area and help bring vulnerable moms can seem very overwhelming. And sometimes when we're in ministry work and we're dealing with people that are in really challenging situations or in very passionate groups of ministry members, we can tend to get burned out, we can feel overwhelmed, and sometimes it shifts us away from our center in prayer and where the Holy Spirit is calling us to be. So for that reason, we've invited Jen Marr to join us today as our final presenter for the day. And Jen's going to present on staying spiritually and emotionally healthy while ministering in these challenging circumstances. Jen Marr comes to us and holds a Master's in Science in Mental Health Counseling from Divine Mercy University in Sterling, Virginia. And as a clinician, Jen lovingly embraces the teachings of her Catholic faith and utilizes an integrative approach in her therapeutic discipline. Jen has served the diocese in various capacities in family ministry and as a speaker and presenter herself and together with her husband, Bill. And she's the proud mother of 8 children. So Jen, thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us today. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate the trust. So what we're going to do, like Rachel said, is we're going to shift the focus from talking about meeting the needs of neighbor to meeting the needs of self. And it's because primarily and fundamentally, an empty pitcher cannot fill a cup. No matter how hard you try, we can't do it. So it's imperative that we learn how to take care of ourselves when we are trying to fulfill the vocation that we feel God has called us to. So I am going to talk to you guys today about compassion fatigue and the reality of compassion fatigue. And we started using this phrase in the 70s, in the 80s. And it was first used with nurses because they began to notice that there was a shift and change in attitude and motivation in nurses the more they worked, especially if they worked in units in ICU, PICU, hospice, right? That they noticed that those nurses weren't really able to, didn't have the mental capacity, flexibility to meet the needs of their patients, right? So compassion fatigue is really important. And it's actually something that I love teaching about. And anyone who is a caretaker can experience compassion fatigue because it is this overwhelming sense that we're giving and we're giving and we're giving. We're not replenished or we're not being replenished. And it starts to wear down on our body, on our soul, on our psyche, right? So what is compassion fatigue? And I'm going to try to minimize this because I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is kind of bothering me here. No, I can't do that. Okay, so didn't mean to do that. Uh-oh. There we go. All right. So compassion fatigue is a feeling of deep sympathy or sorrow for another, right? Who is stricken by a misfortune. And you guys are all spending time with a population that really needs your help. And when we spend time filling and filling normally, right? Because we're called to flourish in relationships, right? There is this natural reciprocity that exists between you and the other, where you give and the other receives, but the other also can give back. And so in that natural reciprocity, we get filled. Well, in this particular vocation, you guys don't get filled. So you guys have to start to figure out, how can you fill yourself? And while compassion fatigue is not in the DSM-5, right? It's been used for first responders, for therapists, for medical workers, for pro-life workers, for social workers, for anyone who is in the field where they're taking care of another. And the contributing factors of compassion fatigue is really important. And this is where we have to humble ourselves enough to be self-reflective, to see how susceptible we are to experiencing compassion fatigue, because there are some personality characteristics that have a higher propensity for experiencing compassion fatigue than others. And a lot of that is based on where you are already spiritually, right? Some of you guys are doing this because you are survivors of abortion, because you know someone who's a survivor of abortion. And so therefore your heart is more engaged and you're giving your heart, your time, your talent in a deeper way, right? That can leave us susceptible to compassion fatigue, right? If we have more of the personality type where we experience the feelings of the other suffering, right? If we consider ourselves more empathic, someone who just really feels the suffering of another, we leave ourselves susceptible to compassion fatigue. If we are impacted by how much we respond to that person, meaning is if we give with the intensity that that is higher than someone else, we leave ourselves susceptible to compassion fatigue. So looking at this list and identifying, what type of I want to say baggage, right? Just to kind of keep it short, but what kind of baggage do I already bring into this vocation, right? Am I healed am I a survivor of abortion? Do I know someone who is a survivor of abortion? How long have I been working in this field, right? How long have you been volunteering your time in this field? And using that to help you measure, right, your susceptibility to compassion fatigue. Because when we're honest with ourselves, when we know ourselves, when we know our limitations, we can catch compassion fatigue before it starts, right? So the goal here is to be able to identify it so that we can prevent compassion fatigue, and mitigate some of the symptoms of compassion fatigue. Or we can use this list as a way to say, well, gosh, am I experiencing that right now? Is that something that I've been experiencing for a long period of time? And the reason why this is so important is because it has a negative impact on how you function, right? Our job performance, our morale, our interpersonal and behavioral aspects of self are impacted, right? We lose the motivation, it decreases. We lose our sense of humor. We have a loss of interest. We sometimes suffer from not even wanting to do this anymore, right? This is something that I don't even look forward to doing anymore. I can't enjoy myself. I can't engage. And I think it was James who was talking to us earlier about being able to meet people who aren't necessarily even in our camp, right? If we're experiencing compassion fatigue and we have already lowered our capacity to engage with people, imagine how affected our capacity is to meet people where they are. Can we see Christ in someone who we know differs in belief in us, right? And so what brings people to this movement are not chants, right? It's not ideology that brings people to this movement. It's how we act, right? Our action in this particular movement, right? That engages other people. That's what attracted Abby Johnson to the pro-life movement, right? It wasn't people screaming or judging. It was people being able to open up their hearts and love her and meet her where she is. And we need to be able to do that with everyone, right? Because that's what gives us strength. So looking at how compassion fatigue can negatively impact our functioning, right? Looking at that and identifying, are these things that I've been experiencing presently over a period of time, right? Do I see someone else experiencing this? And being really honest with yourself, because no one is going to judge you, right? We are called to love others as we love ourselves, right? And so that requires that we love ourselves first. Because if we don't love ourselves genuinely, authentically first, no matter how hard we try, we cannot love our neighbor, right? So if we're not willing to identify the negative aspects of self and be okay with what's coming up for us, especially when we're experiencing symptoms of compassion fatigue, we cannot be there for others and meet them and love them where they are. And that is what this movement is about. It's not just about loving babies. It's about loving moms. It's about loving dads. It's about loving grandparents. And we need to be able to be as present as we possibly can. And that requires that we take care of ourselves first. And I can admit, as a Catholic mom, as someone who used to look at this idea of self-care, when I first started hearing it, my first response was, oh my goodness, that sounds so selfish. All right, self-care just sounds so selfish. It sounds so new agey. And what I didn't realize is that God equips us with the capacity to be able to identify when we're experiencing overwhelm, right? He's given our body the ability to communicate to us. And sometimes, especially in the Catholic community, we have the propensity to spiritualize that, right? To say things like, well, that's just Satan attacking me. I'm so tired. I can't handle this anymore. Well, that's Satan attacking me. Well, that part can be true, absolutely. But God has also designed us with the ability to be able to tell when we need rest, right? When there's a time for rest and when there's a time for volunteering. Joseph Pieper talks about the importance of leisure, right? Our Lord gives us Sunday to rest and to reconnect. In the scripture, right? And in lots of our writing, there we are called to rest, to take care of self so that we can we have the mental capacity to cultivate a more fulfilling, authentic relationship with our Lord. So that when we're refilled, right? When we can press that reset button, we can go out into the world, right? And so these are the strategies that I was taught as a compassion fatigue therapist, that we've implemented when I go out on deployment. And these things really work for us, right? So I'm going to share these with you, whether you work individually, whether you work as a group. These are skills that you can take away and say, okay, how am I going to do this, right? So the first thing you guys want to do is make a formal and tangible commitment to let go, right? To let go of those things that you carry during those times when you're with those in need, right? Giving yourself the time and space to decompress, right? Whether that's through the rosary, whether that is with a hot bath, whether that's with a glass of wine and watching Netflix, whether that's going out and engaging with your friends or going to the gym or taking the dog for a walk, right? But coming up with a formal plan as to how you're going to care for yourself when you've been out volunteering, right? Or working in this capacity. The second thing is setting deadlines and goals connected to a specific activity for self-care. So you're not just going to identify ways in which you personally feel recharged, but you're going to set a deadline. Whether that is after every 5 times that I volunteer, I'm going to set aside 2 hours to decompress, right? So that you have a measurable goal where you can accomplish taking care of yourself. The third thing you're going to do is you're going to create an attainable strategy for self-care that works, right? Meaning that you're not just going to set a deadline, but a strategy. What is that going to look like? Is there some specificity behind how you're going to implement this plan, right? And then reassess it from time to time to make sure that it works. Sometimes, especially when I'm working with my trauma patients, I have great skills that I can give them for decompressing, for self-regulation. Not all of them work. Some of them work for some, and different one works for others. So this is your time to set the goal and then reassess its efficacy, right? And be honest with yourself. The fourth thing that I'm going to advise you guys to do, and this is something that we did on deployment, and it was something that was so beneficial, is have a colleague or a friend hold you accountable for your self-care routine, right? When we were out in deployment, we had one person be the team leader. And that person assessed, they were keeping their eye out for everyone on our team to see when we were becoming stressed, right? When we were becoming overwhelmed, if we were able to be as present with our clients in the beginning of the day than at the end of the day, right? And they would tap us out if they felt that our mental capacity was, our window of tolerance was shortening and it was affecting our ability to be present with the people that we were working with. And we let them. When someone from the outside is looking at us and saying, listen, Jen, you're overwhelmed right now. You need to take a time out. I'm going to trust that person has my best interest at hand. And I'm going to listen to them. So when you guys go out in a group setting, that might be a really good skill to implement, a really good support to implement in your team. Also, something that is important, and I didn't put it on here, but giving yourself time to debrief. Hold on just 1 second. Giving yourself time to debrief. Sometimes you guys can have a really difficult day, really challenging, met with a lot of different difficulties. And to be able to set aside time throughout the day or at the end of the day to do what we call a debrief, to get rid of, to unload those thoughts, feelings, emotions that you were experiencing with your entire group and to support one another. That's something that we teach firefighters to do. That's something that we teach police officers to do. And that's something that you guys can provide to one another when you're finding that the day has really gotten to you. So that's a really good support system to implement in your daily routine, weekly routine, however it is you guys decide how to do this. Taking care of yourself, implementing support actually leaves us more open to cultivating an authentic relationship with our Lord. It allows us to hear his voice when he calls us to a particular vocation, And we know that the Holy Spirit is present and present in us. Don't be afraid to admit that your body is communicating overwhelm to you, because that is a gift from God. That is something that He equips us with so that we can set boundaries to take care of ourselves, so that we can re-enter and be present and loving and really be the light of Christ to people who don't have that, or don't experience Him very often. So I'm going to leave you guys with this. I'm going to continue praying for all of you guys. And I'm going to encourage you to reach out to me or to reach out to other supports if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like you need someone to bounce things off of. You need someone to decompress with. So keep it going.
Thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate the thought that you put into your presentation and the dedication you have to the mental health well-being of all that you encounter. I know this is even beyond your client base, but offering this presentation to all of us is really so valuable, I think, to everybody in our personal lives and in our ministry work. So thank you so much. So as I mentioned, we will be making many of the resources that have been discussed today available through a follow-up email. I'll also try to load those on in like a little package on the Standing Together for Life webpage that we have established that I'll be able to share with you too in that follow-up email, and we'll get that out to you just as soon as possible. So before we completely close, I just want to thank everyone that helped to make this presentation possible, especially despite the weather, that we were still able to provide something. There are so many people behind the scenes, all of my colleagues who have worked with the Zoom platform, helped us to make last-minute decisions. And also thanks to Terry Ginther for her assistance and support in so many ways, not the least of which was to plan the whole Mass for Life, which sadly was not able to occur today. But her work with Monsignor Sam and the whole staff at the Co-Cathedral, we're just so grateful for their flexibility and their willingness to work with us. Like I said, all my colleagues behind the scenes, many thanks to all of our presenters, of whom clearly put such thought and dedication into their offering to us today. And also thanks to our bishop for always supporting our efforts to build a culture of life in the Diocese of Trenton and beyond. So we hope that you enjoyed today's program, and we hope that you're leaving feeling a sense of renewal and empowerment to continue contributing to this culture of life that we so desperately need built in our communities. And remember that this task is the work of all of us with our unique talents and treasures. It's the work of the whole church. And so we leave today determined, we hope, to stand together for life. So with that, I thank all of you for attending, for your attention, and I look forward to hearing all of those new ways that you'll be collaborating creatively to fill the needs of those in need in your communities. Thank you so much. God bless each one of you and have a wonderful day. Stay safe.